Dealing with a narcissist is exhausting physically, psychologically, and emotionally. You hurt me. I tell you, you hurt me. Now, instead of you to say sorry like a normal person would, like a sensible human being, you tell me it's not that deep. What do you mean it's not that deep? Of course, it is that deep. Because you don't get to decide how deeply your actions affect me. You don't get to wound me emotionally and tell me how much I'm allowed to be. Everywhere you go, narcissist, 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 and we've almost emptied it of its meaning. Somebody forgets your birthday, a narcissist. Somebody probably disagrees with you, they're a narcissist. Maybe your ex moved on before you're ready, definitely a narcissist. We've gotten to a point where the word has become a part of our daily vocabulary that it has lost its meaning. Only a few actually understand what it means. And when a lot of people misunderstand something, we fail to protect ourselves against it. Okay, so let's get right into it, guys. Hey, lovelies, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Floripedia podcast, a community where we grow, glow, and get things done while improving one life at a time. I am your ever gorgeous host, Florabella, and on today's episode, I'm not even gonna lie, this is a conversation I've always wanted to have, like genuinely from a very long time, because not because narcissism is something that is new, or maybe because it is just trending, but because it is something that is now commonly used. Everywhere you go, narcissist, 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 and we've almost emptied it of its meaning. Somebody forgets your birthday, a narcissist. Somebody probably disagrees with you, they're a narcissist. Maybe your ex moved on before you're ready, definitely a narcissist. We've gotten to a point where the word has become a part of our daily vocabulary that it has lost its meaning. Only a few actually understand what it means. And when a lot of people misunderstand something, we fail to protect ourselves against it. Now, let's get something straight. Some people will hurt you and then they will dismiss your feelings. But there are different other kind of people that they will not just dismiss your feelings, but they will go around to convince you why you shouldn't even have those feelings in the first place. Crazy, right? And then at some point you start telling yourself, hmm, maybe I'm really the problem. Or maybe I'm just too much. And that's where it all begins. Because the moment you start to question your own emotions, you start becoming easier to manipulate. And once you're easy to manipulate, then you become a very easy target. And it's not witchcraft, my darling. We're talking about narcissistic behavior. And this is not because we're trying to label anybody or we're trying to diagnose anyone from a podcast. No. We're simply trying to talk about what real narcissism look like and how to identify the traits. So by the end of today's conversation, you will understand what a narcissist looks like or who a narcissist is, the misunderstanding around the word because the internet people have already started throwing this word around, and why it seems incredible and loving and sweet in the beginning. The last but not the least is the subtle red flags most intelligent and emotionally aware people miss before they fall victim. So today we're simply not here to gossip about narcissists, obviously. And we're not even trying to diagnose them from a podcast. We're simply just trying to understand this behavior and how to find the clues or the traits of a narcissist so that when you know these clues, because every behavior leaves clues, when you know these clues, you'll be able to save yourself months and even years of emotional confusion, torture, and drama. So, who exactly is a narcissist? Let's clear something out before we move further. A narcissist is not someone who thinks they are attractive. A narcissist is not someone who likes to take selfies. A narcissist is not someone who is confident, and a narcissist is definitely not someone who is selfish from time to time. Because the truth is, aren't we all selfish? Every one of us have the ability to be selfish once in a while. Every single one of us enjoys being appreciated and being told, oh, you look good, you look beautiful. That is not a deformity or a problem. That is simply being human. And every one of us possess that. Now, narcissism, on the other hand, psychology, however, describes it in a different way. Now, according to psychology, narcissism or narcissistic behavior at its core revolves around an inflated sense of self importance, an excessive need for admiration, difficulty empathizing with people and other people's emotions, and a pattern of relating with people in ways that only serves their own narcissistic need. When this pattern becomes severely inflexible and persistent across all areas of a person's life, a professional may now diagnose them as narcissistic personality disorder, also known as NPD. Notice I said a professional. That's because diagnosis belongs to professionals, not podcasters. Okay. And honestly, I think we spend too much time asking whether this person has been officially diagnosed or not. And we're not spending more time asking the more practical and sensible question. How does this person's behavior affect me? Because the truth is there are a lot of people that has not been diagnosed that are very severe that are than those that has been diagnosed. And whether someone has been diagnosed or not, if every interaction with that person leaves you feeling emotionally exhausted, constantly anxious, or questioning your worth, then it's important to take note of that. You do not need a psychologist's permission to safeguard your own peace and validate your experience. You're allowed to protect your peace. And I think that's where most people get it wrong. People spend more time trying to prove that someone is a narcissist rather than paying attention to the undeniable fact that that relationship is hurting them. Sometimes we're so focused on finding the correct labels to things and we ignore the obvious patterns. Imagine this analogy. If every meal in a particular restaurant keeps giving you food poisoning, at some point you will stop eating there, right? You're not going to go on interviewing the chef to find out what is happening in the kitchen before you protect your health. You will stop eating there. Now, your relationship deserves that same wisdom. Apply that same grace to your relationships because it is very important to take note of these things. Hey, lovely. Sorry for cutting you short, but a little birdie told me that 80% of our viewers are yet to subscribe to the Florpedia podcast. Imagine how sad that made me feel. Please, if you've been enjoying this podcast episode so far, kindly subscribe, like, and follow us on all social media platforms. And you can even leave a review on whatever platform you're listening from. This would help us not only provide more good, relevant content for you, but also reach out to more people who needs to hear this. Help us build the community one day at a time. I trust you'll do that for me, right? Okay, I'm going to trust you on that. Kindly subscribe right now and see you on the episode. Let's continue. Now, what's the difference between a narcissistic person, an arrogant person, and a confident person? Because this is where it gets tricky. It all looks alike and they kind of wear similar attires, right? They wear the same clothes. So it can be easy to confuse. But let's use this analogy to break it down. Imagine three people walk into the same room. The first person is genuinely confident. They do not need to prove themselves because they already know who they are. They know why they are there. They are comfortable celebrating other people's win because they understand that other people's success does not dim their light. They can admit when they are wrong because making mistake doesn't destroy their identity. And they don't need to shrink for other people to feel comfortable. They also do not need everybody's validation to feel valuable, right? They do not need anybody's attention to feel good about themselves. Now, imagine the number two person. This person is an arrogant person. They probably believe they're better than everyone else. They might interrupt people's conversation. They might dismiss other people's opinion. They might constantly remind everyone of their achievements and who they are because being around them it's just exhausting. They just want to prove and they show the pride. But beneath all those pride is an insecurity wearing expensive clothes. Let's go down to the third person. This one is a strong narcissistic person who has a strong narcissistic tendency. At first glance, they feel very charming to every other person. They are engaging, they are charismatic, they know exactly what to say and when to say it, and they can make you feel like the most interesting person in the room if you give them chance to, right? They will practically make you feel comfortable because they've learned your move, they've learned your patterns, they've learned your strength and your weakness. And most people fall for this behavior because the truth is, people don't fall for toxicity, right? And narcissist understands how to take charge of people's emotion. And that's the biggest misconception I wish people know. Narcissistic behavior don't usually introduce itself as cruelty in the first place. In fact, they will not even tell you, hey, I'm a narcissist. It's a lie. They often introduce themselves through charm. And charm on its own, like I don't mean juju, but charm on its own is genuinely beautiful because they're genuinely good people who are charming. The difference now is authentic charm invites you into a relationship, while the fake narcissistic one manipulates you into a performance, right? One is rooted in connection, while the other is rooted in control. Unfortunately, you don't usually discover which one you are experiencing until much later when you are now deep into the relationship. Then your eye is going to clear. Which brings me to something that I find fascinating, right? If narcissistic behavior eventually becomes very damaging, why does it often feel so amazing in the beginning? Right? That's exactly where we are going to next because I feel like most people, if we're being honest about this whole thing, we don't wake up one morning and say, oh, I want to choose a relationship that will slowly drain me. I want to choose something that will destroy my confidence. People don't knowingly enter into a place that they will be manipulated. And we don't pray for emotional confusion. We don't dream about walking on eggshells. So, what now happens in the long run? The answer is simple, but at the same time, very uncomfortable. People do not fall in love with manipulation. We fall in love with the version of that person that we met before the manipulation begins. Stay with me. I know it feels confusing, but just stay with me. Most times, when you ask survivors what happened, like, why didn't you see the signs? I think most times it's important to ask them, what did they show you before they started the whole thing? Because narcissistic relationship, if you ask most people that have been through it, they don't describe it as toxic. They say it's magical. Most times, they even tell you they've never felt so understood in their life. They remember little details, finish their sentences, feel complimented often, and somehow made them feel like the most special person in the world. Now, before we continue, let's acknowledge something. All those things on their own are beautiful because healthy people pay attention, healthy people give compliments, healthy people can tell you, you know, beautiful things. And that is why this whole topic needs a little more discernment and nuance when you're trying to get into it. Psychologists often use the term love bombing to describe a pattern where excessive affection, admiration, and attention are used to create rapid emotional attachment. And this affection on its own is very healthy, right? It's healthy, but when people start to throw it quickly, like you just met someone today, and they're already telling you, you are the love of my life, you are the bone of my bone, the sugar in my tea. Take notes. Sometimes narcissistic people tend to push things faster so that you get to fall quickly. Now, sometimes whenever you ask people that survive from narcissistic relationship, how did you fall in love with them? The thing you will notice is that they did not really fall in love with that narcissistic trait. They fell in love with who they showed them because narcissists will observe your move. They will show you a lot of things during the early days, and that's why leaving them can be so complicated. You're not grieving the relationship that you lost or you are losing. You're actually grieving the future that they've put into your head, that you've imagined having. And it's something that you cannot get over. That version of the relationship becomes the standard you keep trying to get back to every single time. They are distant, they are dismissive, they are cold. You remember the person who couldn't stop calling. You remember the person who couldn't stop praising you. You remember the person who couldn't stop making plans for the future, telling you how many children you want to give birth to, and all those things. And you put in more effort just because you're trying to go back to that person you met when you first of all started the whole thing, right? And sometimes they will. They will go back, but long enough to keep you hooked and alive. And you become hopeful. That's the truth. Later, at some point, you become hopeful, and hope is a very, very detrimental thing. Hope is something that will keep you in one place, and you will not even realize how much time has gone. That's why whenever people ask, why didn't you see the red flag? I think it's very important to look at it from that person's point of view, right? And I don't think it's true that you would say, oh, they did not see the signs, they did not see the red flag. Imagine someone occasionally says something that hurts your feeling, and then the person apologizes, right? And then the person buys you flower, make you laugh, make you feel normal again. After a few weeks, they say that thing that hurts you again, or they beat you again. You don't immediately start thinking, oh, I'm being emotionally manipulated. You start thinking, ah, nobody is perfect, right? And that's what decent people will naturally believe, because a good person always believes that everyone is good. And that's normal to think so, because you do not immediately think that, oh, this person is manipulating me. Only a thief sees a thief everywhere they go. So when someone does such a thing, as an empath or someone who has empathy, which is a very beautiful quality but can be very destroying most times, you start to think, oh, maybe this person is just you start making excuses for them, and you start trying to understand them more, trying to do more for them, forgetting that you cannot please these people. You even excuse their behavior, maybe because of their childhood, maybe because they are under pressure, or maybe because they've been hurt before. You know, when someone is saying, oh, I don't trust you, you're this, you're that, and you start making excuses for them that, since I'm not that kind of a person, I think it's because someone else has hurt them before. That's why they cannot trust another person. And this does not happen because you're weak. No, most times, even emotionally intelligent people and stable people can fall victim of this thing. And that's why psychologists calls it the confirmation bias. Once we formed a positive impression about someone, our brain naturally looks for evidence to support that impression that that person is actually good. We look for evidence that contradicts the behavior that we are seeing. And if a third party should look at it from an outsider point of view, they see things that you don't see because they are not emotionally invested like you are. So, what are the red flags that people dismiss, especially emotionally intelligent people? Because let me tell you, narcissists love emotionally intelligent people. They love stable people. They love people who got their shit together because they thrive when they scatter it. They thrive when they can mess you up. These things are easily mistaken as personality difference. The first is emotional invalidation. This is exactly where it all starts, because when I started this episode, I said it from the beginning. Sometimes they will hurt you and then they tell you you're too sensitive. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You're overreacting. Healthy people don't always agree with you. That one I know for a fact, because I don't always agree with my friends. But healthy people would respect that that emotion exists. Someone who is emotionally healthy might say things like, that was not my intention, but I understand how that hurts you and I am sorry. But someone with a narcissistic tendency is more likely to focus on proving that your feeling is wrong and understanding why you have them in the first place to even begin with. You see the difference? One takes responsibility, the other one tries to protect their ego. Another red flag is their inability to take genuine accountability. Pay attention to how someone apologizes to you. Do they say things like, I am sorry you felt hurt, instead of saying, I am sorry I hurt you? Do they immediately explain why their behavior was your fault? Or do they apologize sincerely and said, okay, that's not my intention, but I am sorry? Now, the difference is real accountability does not spend 5 minutes explaining why they shouldn't apologize. It simply owns up to that behavior. Now, the third sign of all is the constant criticism. Not the kind that helps you grow. Don't get me wrong. Criticism is good when it's healthy. But the type that brings you down. First it starts like an advice, then it looks like correction, then eventually it becomes your third voice, your inner voice. You no longer They no longer do it at some point, you do it for them. You catch yourself criticizing your own laughter, your own ideas, your own thoughts, your own growth, your own pace. You start to tell yourself, you start catching yourself doing that criticism for them even before any other person does it. You start to speak less of yourself, you start to do the job for them. You start to tell yourself how bad looking you are, how fat you are, how lazy you are, how useless you are. And that is what happens when people suffer from prolonged manipulation. You now start to become their own voice, and that voice starts speaking inside your head. As I was preparing for this episode, I kept coming back to one thought. And I think the one of the greatest danger of narcissistic behavior is not the fact that it breaks your heart. No, breaking your heart can heal at some point, right? If you work towards it. But I think the danger is it quietly disconnects you from yourself. You stop trusting your own instincts. You stop expressing your opinions. And you start to ask for permission to feel exactly the way you're feeling. You start to ask for permission to even breathe. Now, this episode is for you to understand the relationships that let you breathe and the ones that truly makes you disappear, because the healthiest relationship in your life won't require you to become smaller. It is not going to require you to bring down yourself just to make another person feel better. And it won't make respect feel like a conditional thing, right? It certainly won't leave you constantly wondering whether your emotions are valid or not. Now, in our next episode, we're going to move beyond recognizing what a narcissistic relationship is, because identifying unhealthy patterns is one thing and it's the beginning, honestly. But starting to ask the hard questions and facing reality and focusing on how to heal from such narcissistic traumatic events is the next stage. So we'll be talking about trauma bonds while living isn't the end of the whole emotional torture, and how attachment can often make you feel tied to a narcissistic person, especially when after you've left, you still miss them. I want this episode to be very short, and that's why we're going to be moving that to a part two, because this is a broad topic and it's not something we can just talk about in one episode. So I just want you to go and sit and think about this. When you think about the relationship you're in right now, does it make you feel fulfilled? Does it make you feel happy? Or are you slowly becoming someone you no longer recognize when you look at yourself in the mirror? Sometimes when you answer those kinds of questions, you start to understand the pattern of the relationship you are in and the ones you keep attracting. And that will prepare you for our next episode on how to recover from a narcissistic relationship. Okay. So my lovelies, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I can't wait to see you on our next episode that we can dive into proper healing and not just pointing out what a narcissist look like. So until next time, keep growing, keep learning, keep improving, and always remember, never lose yourself just to keep someone else in your life. You deserve a chance. You deserve to be who you want to be. The sky is big enough to take all of us. Don't shrink yourself for anyone, and do not ask for permission to be who you want to be. Okay. See you on our next episode again. Same place, same time, 6 p.m. every Sunday on all podcast platforms and even on YouTube. Okay. Catch ya. Bye.